Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington REALTORS legal hotline lawyer. I've been getting the same question a lot, but the question sounds differently when I get it from a listing broker versus a buyer broker. This question is born out of a deep frustration from this incredible seller's market that we're experiencing. Maybe you wouldn't use the word incredible. You might come up with some other adjective more fitting of your feeling at the moment. But nevertheless, in this market, here is the question I'm getting from both sides of the transaction. Listing brokers say to me, how is it that a buyer broker can represent a buyer who writes more than one offer at a time when the buyer can buy only one property? A buyer might write 2, 3, 4, 5 offers at a single time, knowing they can only buy one property. How can they do that? How does the Code of Ethics, how does the agency law, when brokers have to disclose material facts that their client may not be able to perform more than one transaction, honesty and good faith, just the fact that every buyer in a transaction is obligated to perform the terms of the contract in good faith. How do you take all of that and say it's okay for a buyer broker to write more than one offer for one buyer at a time, knowing that that buyer can only buy one piece of property? That's the question I get from the listing brokers. From the buyer broker, here's how the question sounds. My buyer made an offer on seller's property. It was above list price, doesn't have any contingencies, it's a cash deal, it's going to close in 20 days, whatever terms you want to come up with. The buyer met and exceeded the seller's offered price and terms by a landslide. Buyer submitted the offer on Friday. It has a 2-day expiration on the offer. Listing broker acknowledged receipt of the offer, but despite my request for information, listing broker won't tell us if they've received any other offers, how many other offers they've received, how competitive my buyer's offer is. Does my buyer even have a shot at getting this property? Has the seller seen my buyer's offer? Listing broker won't give me any information at all, but just tells me you're going to have to wait until the seller reviews the offers. So take these two dynamics, because if you're active in the marketplace right now, you've probably felt this pressure from both sides. Listing brokers frustrated because they might have a buyer's offer get accepted and then the buyer terminates seemingly for no reason, and they find out later that the buyer made 2 offers at once. Buyers are saying, look, we lose properties this fast. We make an offer, it doesn't get accepted. If there's 5 properties that come on the market on a Thursday afternoon and we like 4 of them, we've got to make an offer on all 4 of them if we want a shot at any one of them. And listing brokers aren't communicating with us, so we don't know what's happening with our offer. Yeah, we're going to shotgun the market and try and get a house because we need a place to live. Brokers, I understand the forces of the market itself, but this problem you're creating. How are you creating this problem? Because you're not talking to each other. Listing brokers, you're not creating any benefit for your seller by failing to talk to buyer brokers about the status of their offer. If you're unsure what amount of information you should be communicating back to a buyer broker, then talk to your seller. Talk to your seller at the time you take the listing, not when offers start coming in, but at the time you take the listing. Seller, in this market, I can't make any promises about whether or not you're going to get multiple offers, but you might get multiple offers. In fact, we hope you do. And if you do, let's talk about the variety of ways you can negotiate them. If you have multiple buyers, those buyers are going to want to know the status of other offers that are coming in. Seller, how much can I tell them? Can I let a buyer know, for example, that I've received other offers? Can I let them know how high the other offers are? We might negotiate a higher price from one buyer by letting them know how high the competing offers are. Or we might get the highest price by not telling them what the highest price is, but letting them know there are other buyers and they need to beat a certain price. or they need to just use their imagination to come in with their highest and best. Any number of ways of negotiating the seller, but what can I tell the buyers? Get information to those buyers. You might find that the very best way to get highest price and terms for your seller is to communicate with the buyers about the qualifications of their buyer, help the buyer brokers figure out how to get their buyers into this property. With the proper motivation, the seller might get the best price and terms. That motivation may only come, however, through you, listing broker, brokering the deal, representing your client, talking to the buyer broker. Buyer brokers for your part of this equation, if you have a listing broker who's not talking to you, then there's less that you can do about that. But buyer brokers, be proactive, be gracious, be professional. Do not immediately approach the listing broker as though they are the enemy. Approach the listing broker as though they've got a product to sell and you've got a consumer who wants to buy it. How are you going to get these two parties together to put the transaction together and close it? Buyer broker, reach out to the listing broker. Try and build that communication. Let them know who your buyer is. Let them know how well qualified your buyer is. Let them know who the lender is that they've been working with. Ask the buyer's lender to reach out to the listing broker and let the listing broker know how qualified your buyer is. And ask for information about the status of your buyer's offer, letting the listing broker know that if your buyer isn't competitive on this property, they're going to have no choice but to make offers on other properties. And while you don't want to have the buyer, or the buyer doesn't even want to make an offer on another piece of property because they really want this one, if they get no feedback from the listing broker, they're going to have no choice. So listing brokers, buyer brokers, talk to each other. Listing brokers, I would encourage you to do this. When your seller is considering multiple offers and they've narrowed it down to one or two that they like, pick up the phone and talk to the buyer broker and make sure that that buyer has still prioritized your seller's home as the home they want to purchase. Buyer brokers, if it turns out that your buyer has purchased one home while they've got other offers pending, get those other offers withdrawn immediately. Don't run the risk that a seller will accept your buyer's offer with you knowing that your buyer is immediately going to terminate based on whatever, inspection contingency or a Form 17 right to rescission, whatever it might be. This whole issue, brokers, comes down to communication, and you control the communication. It's a tough market. I'm not going to say that this is going to be a problem that's easily solved, but it is a problem that you can solve. So as an industry, I encourage you to do that. If you have questions on this topic or any other, send an email to me, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington REALTORS member.